Hey, good evening. Elevate Your Profits. Mark Gassert and Tom Ginn will be right back. Well, Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tom. What's going on?
Well, it's I had a great weekend here in Wisconsin. It's been cold, rainy, whatever,
Hmm.
but I'm grateful that I know that spring is coming right around the corner here. So I know in Georgia there it's probably a little bit warmer. There, you guys are playing baseball already.
Yeah, well, that's what I did yesterday and Saturday. It was a Saturday Sunday baseball thon. 5 games Saturday, 5 games Sunday, and I know what we're going to talk about tonight, which I can kind of relate what I've dealt with this past weekend. But it's going to get up in the 80s, they say this week. So
Oh wow! Oh
yeah,
wow!
yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah.
Uh,
From one
we're
extreme
about
to the
6 weeks behind you here in Wisconsin. Uh, but
I remember.
Mark, I know we were talking this morning, and I think
Yes.
we're seeing an environment that people are really stressed out, right?
Yep.
Would you agree?
Oh yeah, and it's businesses anywhere from if they're manufacturers reps or a manufacturing company, the supply chains killing them. Obviously, the prices of fuel does not help. Things are not going down; they seem to be going up. Uh, and this isn't a message of doom and gloom. It's just what's going on out there. So when you're constantly dealing with this and going to the grocery store, restaurants, or they're not lowering their prices. Every time I look around, something keeps going up. So, and
Yeah.
you could probably fill in the blanks on that, seeing as how you have a financial background. But it's just interesting right now, and it's happening right here in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, as well.
Yeah, Mark, out and about when I get out, go to the grocery store and about people are, you could just see people in stress. They're
Yes.
not smiling and they're curt, they're short, they're not engaging. And people are upset. I mean, hurting and they're fearful. That's what I'm sensing.
Right.
But what I like to do tonight, Mark, we kick it off a little bit differently. Is we got a little entertainment.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah, and the
Th-
reason before you bring out our entertainer tonight, I think what we should really is be grateful for the country we live in because we
oh,
have more
absolutely.
options, more opportunities, and no matter what's going on, we've this country's come through some very significant tough times,
Yes.
from wars to economic decisions, to depressions, the 2008. Currently,
Right.
we're going through some challenges that I think will be long lasting for a while. And but if we can just recognize, move to a place of gratitude, we can see the blessings that we have and be able to work off of those. And because if we're in a negative space, we don't see the real opportunities that are around.
Right.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But let's bring in your guest tonight.
Oh man, this has some history behind it. This gentleman right here, man, the trumpeter extraordinaire. Now, this is not Miles Davis, but you can see he's in full regalia here, like he's gone to battle, which I think a lot of us are doing that day in and day out. But I'm gonna just push the button here and let him do his thing, if you don't mind. And
Let's
since
do
you
it.
talked about God bless America.
God bless America!
Look at that man go. Well, thank you, sir. That was Master Sergeant Trumpeter there. I just think that's kind of cool. I don't think you'd ever see a person in the armed forces that wasn't military decorum, but way that guy can move his hips and play at the same time. He might be related to Elvis, but that's something that we should be thankful for to live here in this country because there are others. You mentioned something that are struggling far worse than what we are. And I won't even go down that rabbit hole, but they truly are. And
Right.
there's two countries right now that are engaged with one another, and um, some wild stuff's going on out there in our world today.
Yeah. And then here at home, we just got to be grateful. I think we can agree to disagree in this country versus being
Sure,
divisiveness and
sure.
everything. Everybody is wanting to just sort of like the Oscars. Somebody wants to punch somebody in the face all the time. So we just got to be more grateful. See
Right,
the goodness in each individual, no matter what our views are, because we all have something to contribute, and there's a common ground for all of us. But we're facing some pretty significant. We've had some other programs talking about the five things that to prepare for taxes,
right.
inflation, those type of things. But today in our conversation earlier today is let's really talk about what inflation's doing. What are your options? What are we all challenged with? And I'll share what I've done for my 40 years over life. And Mark, you share a little bit about what you've done to
Sure.
uh, get to where you're at and your challenges. We all have challenges at one point or another. So
Right.
let's sort of go from that place. Is you good with that?
Oh, absolutely.
I'll just sort of start with this. My background prior to going into business for myself in 1983, I was involved in the corporate world as a contract negotiator for the Teamsters, union fact finder, and that was sort of my mission and the path I was
Right.
going to take. But I recognized some things that didn't resonate with my internal values. So I could have I could have been retired 10 years ago. If you call, I never plan on retiring now. Uh, but I would have had a very comfortable high six digit retirement income from if I would have stuck that out. But that's not the point. The point is you got to find those things in life that bring you, fill your values, make you happy, purposeful, all those things. And I have found it. And I started my career in the financial services arena under the auspices of Art Williams, the old A.L. Williams company.
A.L. Williams. I remember that. That
Yeah,
man, back in the 80s, that was a big deal around here. Big
yeah,
time. Because he is a Georgia boy.
yeah,
So,
it sure is. And football coach, and I
right.
sort of resonated with being a football player myself. So I just resonated, but more importantly, what he was teaching to help people understand, even back in the early 80s, people were struggling financially. We'd come out of some tough times, the heavy recession back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I'm just going to run some statistics out there because these are things that are always weighing on us that cause stress. Mark, we'll talk a little bit about stress. Stress is the number one
Right.
cause of chronic illness, and the number one cause of stress is money. Uh, and generally, it's because of the lack of it. You know, but I
Right.
just want to cover some statistics here because I've been in this industry, and I can say this confidently because the statistics haven't changed; they've actually gotten worse. And the reason I want to bring this up is this is probably relevant to probably 60 to 80% of our audience out there, and I believe the numbers are true. Hey, we got Mr. Ron
Hey,
Goodwin. How you doing, Ron?
yes, sir. The man. He can create any marketing plan for your event, whether it's
Wonderful.
a shirt, whether it's, you know,
All
something
the
you drink
swag.
out of, you name it, he can He can brand it. He can embroider it. He can make it happen at Goodwin Graphics. Thanks for being here, Ron. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's one of the avenues that you and I will be talking about tonight.
Right.
In your business for yourself. There's different ways to go into business.
Right.
But let's talk about some reality, some things that hopefully that will cause you to maybe to reflect. How do you offset this challenge that we have in the thing called inflation? And once it inflates its price, do we ever see it ever come back down again?
Not in my lifetime. I've never seen
No,
that happen.
we create a new normal, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But I'll just cover some things here. This is a staggering statistic when you think about it. That 1/3 of the American people have zero savings. Zero savings. Think about that for a moment.
Right.
Okay. Why is that happening? Those are questions we're not going to answer tonight. There's a lot of reasons why that happens. Me being in that, coming from that space all these years. And let's take a look at another one. Wow. People have a dwindling sense of financial confidence. And there's only about 34% of the American people have some sort of financial confidence.
Right.
And let's take a look at debt. Hey, it's $15 trillion. The average person in this country has $155,000 of debt, which includes their mortgage. And 61% of the American people are living paycheck to paycheck. And that includes those that are making 6-digit income. So those are problems. Those are problems that shouldn't have occurred because there's a lack of financial literacy in this country. We've been culturally programmed to get it now, put it on credit. We'll worry about it tomorrow. Procrastination, before we know it, we're 60. And gee, I can't retire, or I can't do what I envisioned I wanted to do. Or the long-term problem that this culture is going to see is people my age. See, I'm 72, right? I'm not going to hide what my age is. There's a crisis going on. Who's going to take care of you as you age? Do you have the money? Does the government have the money? No. It's going to be a mess. This baby boomer generation is going to put a big hurt on our finances of this country, our taxes and everything else. And it's all because of ignorance, not really understanding money, how it works. Culturally been programmed to buy today, put it on credit, enjoy it now. We'll worry about those things later. So that creates a major problem. Well, if we know that problem, my question to you would be, how can you solve that problem? Well, I have been in the financial industry, and I had my own financial service company for nearly 20 years. I had over 40 agents that I hired almost 400 in 20 years. Okay, Mark,
right.
That in mind. This applies to real world out there. I hired about 400 people, and out of that I had 10%, and that's higher than the industry average of people staying in the industry, being successful. And I give credit to those that trained me so I can train them. I don't take any responsibility.
Sure.
10% were able to stay in this business, make a difference, educating families. And between me and my team and my years of coaching and the things I've been doing, literally there's been thousands of people that have been set up financially to not to be the statistic.
Right.
I feel good about that. But we need more people to understand these principles. But I've applied the principles that have been taught to me. I'm going to bring up some references, and then we'll just talk about it, and then we'll turn it over.
Okay.
There's some principles out there. They're very simple. People are talking about wealth. Well, everybody's going to have a different definition of wealth is.
Right.
So we can't compare what that is, but basically what wealth is, and I call it critical mass, is whatever your lifestyle that you decide that you want to have, that you have the assets and resources to support that lifestyle. Now, Tom Ginn has a lifestyle I've created. I've created critical mass, and I don't have to worry about my lifestyle. Yeah, I'm getting hit with inflation, but my strategies offset inflation, and I continue to put those things in place. So my first mentors, Art Williams, Common Sense to Financial Independence. Very simple principles that isn't taught in school. I can probably interview anybody and I could ask them, do they have a zero-based budget? Do you have an emergency fund? We just know the statistics. Statistically, 61% of the people don't have 3 months of income to carry them through if they lost their job, or even last couple of years with what happened with the big C thing. So that was my first one. That's what I taught for years. And then I made a decision to take my knowledge in finances to become a coach. And I became a certified Dave Ramsey coach. I see it. We got some comments we need to post up there.
No, we're just bantering. He goes, "Oh, I was just getting buried by statistics and sanctions on the government websites." That's what Robert's saying, and Ron's messing with Robert about why he couldn't find the connection right away because he's out in Canada there, And I just said, "Oh, Canada is OOOA," So we're just having little bantering,
That's cool. But back to seriousness, is that then I became a Dave Ramsey certified coach, and
Right.
the principles: zero-based budgeting, know where every money goes, every dollar that has a place to go to work for you, the process of getting out of debt, those type of things. And then another person I've influenced is Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett, I'm not talking about his genius and his strategies and buying companies and how he does that. But here's a man that is worth $126 billion that lives a life of prudence, purpose. You know this story. He just switched over to a smartphone after years of a flip phone. Yep. But here's what I heard him speak at a college. He says, there isn't a reason in this country that a person that gets up every morning, goes out and pursues what they want to pursue in a good career path, job, living wages. We won't get into what all that is, but we have opportunities to either create that ourselves or find the opportunities to get ourselves prepared to become whatever we want to become. There's no restrictions of what our potential can be. And he said this: there is no reason that every American shouldn't be a millionaire by age 50. And people go, what? How many millionaires do you know, Mark? Real millionaires.
Well, in my lifetime, I would say 5. I mean, knew real well, Now I know of people, right now they're all out there, self-proclaimed on the internet or whatever. But I'm actually saying in the flesh now. 3 of those people have departed the planet, but yeah, and one was within my family, so yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, but here's the real numbers: less than 3.5% of the American people have a net
Right.
worth of $1 million.
Right.
That, in my opinion, and knowing
Right.
what I know and how that's occurring, it should be. We have a big problem to correct with that.
Right.
Some of the people are so far down the path. There's ways to create $1 million asset without having $1 million. Okay, that's what I like teaching. But that's a staggering statistic. There's no reason. This is what Warren Buffett says. He had them all stand up and sit down by asking these questions. Everybody stand up. How many of you believe by the time you're 50 you'll be a multimillionaires? Half of them sat down. They just didn't believe it. They couldn't see it. They don't have an understanding what that would be. He says everybody should be still standing. He says this is how you get there. The traditional way. Number one, live below your means. Okay? Get out of debt, stay out of debt. Now people argue, well, there's good debt and bad debt. I guarantee you, no debt, all debt has a downside. Even those that say leverage somebody else's money for an appreciative asset, there's still risk there. Okay, look at what might happen in the real estate market, a bubble.
Right.
People are paying way too much for their property, and at some point it's going to come down, and they got a lot of debt, and they can't afford to pay it off. They don't have enough cash flow out of it. I mean, I can go off and off on that. Then he says, save money. Save money. And he says, don't worry about where you're going to save it. As you grow, you got to have something to save to invest, right? You got to have some sort of savings to move to investments.
Right.
And the last thing he said is invest in yourself. Invest in those skills, not another degree. He says, I'm not putting down degrees, but invest in yourself because you're the greatest asset you have. And he says, invest in this. Your thinking in regards to prosperity, wealth, and belief, those type of things, personal development. So Warren Buffett. And let's see, who else I have here?
Well, Ron and Robert are going at it. I remember those days when I would scroll Facebook and without end, and I'd find many lives that were open to comments. Ron and I were talking about, I said that Ron is a well-known frugal Yankee that makes it happen every day. Now that's a compliment because the business that Ron's in, being in the trade show industry and the way things change, what you're talking about, in his industry alone with, the graphic end of things, electronics that came into play, digital, and Ron can probably relate to all this screen printing. I'm really dating myself, but that ain't happening as much anymore. Although some people do it, you can do it, but Ron could probably give us a dissertation on how his industry has dramatically changed just from a graphic perspective and what you were talking about. And I don't mean to interject and steal your thunder, but what you're talking about, you and I shared with one another, and I'm sure Ron and Robert, the greatest generation, they're just about gone. And people like my father, he happened to be one of those individuals you were talking about. Another one was my brother-in-law who had his own business. That's how he did it. But it's interesting that if you go back to try to crack the code, there's really no code to crack. I think if you look at what they did and how they did it, it's these principles that you're talking about. I'm talking about your successful types back in the day. I can remember people like Ron, and we were kidding about some of the ethnicity here, the Greek contingent, but people that had grocery stores. I could name an individual, Shaddles is the last name. He had a Jewish grocery store that, thank God, he was open on Sundays while we needed to buy things for our Easter, and it was kind of cool. But all those people had principles. My first job I worked at Pfeiffer's Foodland, and just and these people, they implemented these things that you're talking about, and that's why they were successful. And we seem to get away from that. I'm not saying everybody, but you mentioned something about wanting it right now. No understanding of delayed gratification. Like I'm sure Ron could share that with us when he started his business back in the day. I'm sure he was like rocking and rolling and knocking out, $100 bills every day. Well, it doesn't happen like that. He's gone through his share of trials and tribulations. Yeah.
What is that reference? Do you know what?
I'm trying to read that. I'm pulling. Let me scroll down here. Is he saying Greece? Oh, I think he meant to say Greece. Yeah, that's what he was talking about, probably.
But Mark, we've all faced financial challenges and struggles,
Sure.
those
Sure.
type of things. And I'll just share some things I've done. I've done what I've coached. When I started getting into financial service, studying these principles, I started assessing what my behavior was, and I started changing behaviors. Before I even got into coaching, I started, when things got tight, didn't know if my next commissions would come in from financial services. I didn't let my ego and my pride get in the way. I went and got a second job, but I was still pursuing my passion in my goal in life
Right.
until that business really developed. And too many people get prideful. What would somebody think that you're working at a PDQ or one of those convenient operations, a Quick Trip or 7-Eleven, wherever you are in the world, they're all the same.
Right.
Or just picking up something and bring a couple $300 extra a month in. Because I recognize this, that too many people, if they had savings, they say, well, I'll just use my savings. I never took that philosophy. I will make money so I don't dip into my savings. And as I built my savings up, I was able to do more and more in my businesses, make the appropriate investments.
Right.
Yeah, I made mistakes. I used some credit at times in my life that came back to haunt me, but I don't have that problem anymore.
Right.
I'm an all cash guy, and cash is king. But you got to find ways to get out of the muck that you might be in.
Right. And can I just say that that's a great point that you're bringing up, like where you were, what you had to do, and all I'm going to say is maybe 11 years ago for me, I didn't even think it was possible to have just an average credit score, much less a good, solid credit score today. But 11 years ago, if you had told me I'd be at this certain number, I would have said, "You're nuts. There ain't no way that's going to happen." Because I was pretty much drowning, man. I didn't know which way to turn initially till I figured it out.
I've moved around the country. I've sold my business off, and I moved around the country, did some sales management, ran a regional company territory out in New Mexico, moved to Wisconsin. I wanted to go into business for myself again. And
Right.
I love photography, kids, and sports. So I started a youth sports photography company.
Cool.
Well, guess what, Mark? We know this, that traditionally in this country, it takes at least $60,000 to get a brick and mortar or a business open, because you got
Absolutely.
websites. 60 grand is the average.
Yes.
And the odds are against you that you won't even be in business in 5 years. 80% of
Right. Can I just ask, and you don't have to give me the exact number, Ron, but when you started your graphic business, I don't want to know the exact number. Was it, like in the 20s, the 30s, or was it even less than that back in the day? I don't know. But, of course, it's all relative to today. What would it take to start today, what you're doing? I'm just curious about that because it always intrigues me because you've mentioned it. It's all relative, as far as like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's still the same principle. So,
yeah. So business is one way to go. We were talking about this morning, Mark, right?
right.
And there's a lot of people say business is the key to freedom. Well, it can be, but some people are not wired to be in business. They
Right.
can learn to be wired, and
Yes.
that takes work, and that's a process in itself.
Right.
But you want to elaborate on what you shared with me this morning?
Well, there's a certain gentleman out there, Andy Frisell, that had a little podcast, and he talked about this very same thing. He said that not everybody is what Tom just mentioned, wired to, and I listened to this thoroughly, to be in business for themselves. I think it is a tremendous thing if you can do that. I have the utmost respect for anybody that's in business for themselves. But he said some of you cannot handle the roller coaster ride, much less the demands of running your business day in and day out, because you can't quit and you're going to go through some ups and downs and bumps and bruises, and some people cannot handle that. He said what you might want to consider is becoming more entrepreneurial within your organization where you're working at, if you have the latitude to do that and take care of business that way. Not everybody does. I understand that, but in the same breath, you can't just say, okay, and this is where what I was talking about. If you're already in debt, and I'm going to go to the bank and get more debt, and I'm going to start a business, say for $60,000, or more, 100, 150, 500,000, whatever it is. Lord knows you can't get a McDonald's franchise, but now you got to borrow money, and that's more pressure on you. And I'm not telling people not to look at things to do for themselves. That's not what I'm saying. But some people get a half-baked idea and say, hey, I'm just going to borrow 60 grand and have a janitorial service or a cleaning business. And then I'm going to invest maybe another 5 grand in my brand, my website, and business cards. And before you know it, it's an investment. I mean, it's tremendous what goes into it.
Yeah.
And how I know some of these things is when my brother-in-law was alive, because he had his own business, what it took. And that's truly why I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurs. Not everybody's designed to be one.
But you're an entrepreneur, and I'll just use what you do on weekends, the
Yeah.
basketball and the baseball. That's
Yes.
an entrepreneurial. You take something you love doing, being
Right.
around, you enjoy the sports, you enjoy the kids, and you go out and you spend a whole day calling balls and strikes or running up and down a court, whatever.
Right.
And that's not going to make you wealthy. But what is extra $500 or $1,000 a month do in the overall picture of
Yeah.
Mark Gassert
Well,
family?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're knocking down, say, $500 over a weekend, I'm just throwing this out here. How would that impact things for you if you're looking for some extra dollars? Now, you're trading hours for dollars. That's true. But it's a start. And I know guys that start out doing what I'm doing, and then they become what administrators and so forth, and oversee tournaments. And there's some serious dollars to be made in youth sports and some of these tournaments that are out there, particularly in this state. And I say that respectfully. And they do a fantastic job. And then they're looking for quality people to officiate, administrate, behind the scenes, and they get corporate sponsors, and it's a lot of fun, and people buy into it. And particularly in youth sports, you had a photography business. Every mother and father out there, they want those action photos of their sons and daughters, whatever the sport is. So yeah, things it can happen. But for me, yeah, I do enjoy doing it. So it's not like a burden. Although yesterday was interesting. But as my partner and I think I shared with you, what was it? I won't use the bad words, but they more or less told us that was probably the worst display of umpiring they ever seen, and that particular team lost, and the other team that won told me we did a great job. So it all comes with the territory, and I think it was kind of neat, and I'm just going to mention his nickname. Well, Scooter Morrison. Yeah, Scooter put out. I don't know if you took a look, but I shared this publicly. He talked about how umpires, you know, need to get better, need to improve, and need to take care of one another, and need to mentor one another. And uh, there are so many things out there now that you can review on the internet, like on a YouTube channel, instructional tutorials. And there's just so much information, even in baseball, like fundamentals for kids, basketball, swimming, field hockey, it could go on and on and on. But if you don't, you mentioned invest in you, then you're not going to know these things. And I always find it interesting. Ted Barrett put something out there. It's about umpiring and the rules of the game, and it's really some solid stuff. And I like to learn from anybody and everybody. I don't care if it's their first year. I try and learn from that person. One of the things that Scooter mentioned about is getting to know the person and understanding where they're coming from. And I think that's why sometimes people, I use the word geek up. Like there's a lot of tension. Like yesterday, I noticed at the games, and a bunch of us umpires were talking about it, and it's because of some of the things you're talking about. The gas price is going up. They got to travel to a tournament. Maybe they got to get a hotel room. And now here it is Sunday. When do we finish? Now we got to get back home, go to work, and that's why I tell some of these kids, like even if they're 12 or 15, 6, hey, tell your mom and dad you appreciate them and give them a hug and tell them thank you because they're getting you to all these events.
Yeah.
And it's not cheap. Travel of baseball in particularly is not cheap. Even basketball, AAU, we could get into all this.
Yeah. Here in
And I don't know how people do it.
hockey.
Right, hockey, yeah. I don't know how people do it.
Well, Mark, they do it with money they don't have.
Right.
They're strapped to the hilt, and that's the numbers speak for themselves. I can say that confidently.
Right.
But
Yeah.
So we have these issues of creating a lot of stress. Stress is the number one reason for a chronic illness, and if we can eliminate that, our quality of life goes up. It's not always about how much money you have.
Yeah.
We hear. I've been in this industry, been around very successful people. I've considered basically pretty successful in relationship to the norms out there. I'm not normal, but the norms. But it took a lot of work. I had to get my pride out of the way to keep it going. Going after my dream. I took second jobs. I did some extra things, and didn't worry about what people thought, and it all paid off. But I would just tell people out there, under today's environment, you got to find a way to solve inflation. And it's basically the bottom line is this: you got to increase your cash flow. That's the only way.
Right.
More dollars to buy the same goods and services. We're not talking about making mega millions and moving. You got to do something. I as a financial coach, I would have everybody go through and create a zero-based budgeting fair where the discretionary income, where the money's being blown. That you're not. Most people can tell you where their money goes. Right? Seriously, I can say it after 40 years. They can't. Most people can't tell you where $500 went away because I eat out a month. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What would $500 a month? Cut that in half. You got half as much. Put $200 a month. What that would do in 20 years, you have $1.4 million. I mean, just think about it, folks. So that's a long strategy, and you got to find more cash. How do you do that? Well, I want to go into business. That's where my dreams can be. Well, let's take a look at the options. You may have a talent, a skill, something you do. Doesn't mean you're going to be successful in business with it, because you got to learn some business acumen. You got to understand marketing. Most business people have a good skill, but they don't understand marketing, and they can't sell. They can't close the deal.
Right.
They may be good at what they do, but they don't. My stepfather was a tremendous mechanic, tremendous heavy-duty truck mechanic business, but he didn't know how to ask for the money. The selling part. So that was the demise. So because you're good at, and if you have that, go find somebody that you can plug in part-time and shadow them and learn it. There's a lot of people that teach you the ropes. If you got a talent, exploit it. But don't go out there and start a business just because you love what you do day one. Get some business acumen, get some school, get some mentoring. Or you can go around and buy a business that's already existed. Like maybe Ron puts his business. I want to go into the print business. He buy somebody's business. But if you don't have any business skills, you better figure out to be a shadow for a while before you buy the business. Or you go and buy a franchise. Most people can't afford $60 to $2 million, right?
Sure.
For a system that demonstrates it will work if you work it. Then again, you still got to have what? A business acumen. You still have to build yourself. You got to work with people. You're doing a lot of different things. A big investment.
Hey, I just want to share something Robert said,
Yeah.
and this is interesting, and you know what he's talking about. Um, he said, so the comment king, he goes, me is on a mission to connect income generation to this thing I love to do, and then he said, he's just sharing something, which is I appreciate you doing this, Robert. He said, if I had an reduced pension, I would be in great shape. But I do not, and it is just as well. I might not have been as motivated to go all in and on creating connections, so I have people to, love on. And I understand what he's saying, but what Robert's saying right there, pensions, social security. I mean, we could go through all these different things that, some people are counting on social security. And we've talked on this before, and I'll be grateful and thankful if I do see it, get it. That's cool, but I'm not just going to rely on it. I mean, eventually, with what's going on out there, it's probably not going to be, for my kids. I mean, I don't see how, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that's a culturally wrong information. It was never meant to be the primary source. The
Sure.
primary source is you take responsibility, you save and invest. You
Right.
provide all the things: IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, all the different vehicles used. And guess what? Only 33% of the American people put any money into a qualified plan.
Right.
So
And
we have the vehicles. It's this lack of, they're ignorant. Ignorance is not being stupid. Ignorance means not aware of the outcomes of how you're operating. Oh, so how can you live on $1,500 a month? Social Security is a hypothetical, when your lifestyle at age 62 still requires $5,000 a month. How is that going to
right.
happen? It's not going to happen.
Right.
You're going to have to be greeting and meeting at what? The Walmart, right?
Well, they got rid of the meters and graders at Walmart.
That shows how much I shop. I don't even go out and shop. I don't know if they're still there.
I just because I was like, well, we'll forget that job, and I guess the only other job I'm kidding. I post every now and then where I grew up in Pennsylvania. The guy's name's Crazy Wayne at the Lebanon Farmers Market. I made a comment one time, hey, when you get tired of that gig of being PT Barnum, like, let me know, I'll take your place. But there's a guy that is promoing the farmers market. Yeah, he's a hoot, and sometimes he's really amped up. He probably is like on high octane coffee on some of those amped up versions, but he's doing something he loves. I do want to go back, and I'm going to share this, and I don't know if you're listening, Royce, but his name is Roy Scooter Morrison. I'm going to share this again. You were talking about what people do. Now, here's a gentleman, executive director at Titusville Civic Center. Okay, that's one thing he does. He's a senior pastor at Life Point Ministries. Okay, he's the founder CEO at American Sports Officials Inc. Now you're talking about various streams of income. He's the he's an umpire at Florida Collegiate Umpires, staff at Collegiate Umpire. He's self-employed at he's a notary public. That's good to know, Royce. I'll have to check that out. They call him Scooter. I don't know why, but I've watched some of his content. He's a real neat guy, which comes since I do this. He mentioned I'm just an umpire, and he will not tell you he does college or whatever level. He'll tell you I'm just an umpire, and he's a neat guy. And if you're listening to this, because I'm going to reach out to him because I already have, we would really love for you to come on here and talk about your story and what you're doing today, because I think it's worth talking about, Royce. You need to share this, and not just within the umpiring community. You need to share it with everybody, because I think you're a very unique individual. good guy, and it goes back to what I say. I think umpires are pretty cool people. Period. You know, he's a you talk about a go giver. He is.
Yeah.
But I'll have to share this out because his post from it was yesterday, Sunday morning or whatever. I don't know if you watched the whole thing or not, but it's incredible what he talks about.
Yeah. Mark, one of the things I've been teaching for years is we got residual bills. And even though where I am in
Right.
my life, I still have residual bills. I got my cell bill, I got my internet. I don't have a car payment. I don't have a house payment. I don't have any of those big, heavy things, but insurances and all the stuff that required. I got a grocery bill, those type of things. We got residual obligations. Wouldn't it make sense to find a way to get residual income?
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I teach. And people think, well, how do you do that? Well, there's a thing called network marketing out there. And I'll just plant this seed. It's by far the best business vehicle that's out there because number one, they got a product, they have service, no employees. You can just go down the road, and just having that business entity, and you're making $200 to $300 a month is a big deal. Maybe that $200 to $300, put it away in your 401k or a qualified plan. You got another 15, 20 years, or even 10 years. What would that
Right.
do? Or just that $200 to $300 a month. So you got a little cush you can enjoy. You don't have
Right.
to, or you could take, as Warren Buffett says, it is still, if you treat it like it is a business, the business model is perfect. It's no different than any other business. You just have an opportunity to just move product yourself or a service, or you can hire a sales team basically to move product or
Right.
service, multiple streams of income, or you can build outlets. You can build bigger stores and multiple stores throughout the country and the world. Big corporations do that all the time. Why don't you? For $40 to $1,000, what it takes to get a good network marketing company.
Right.
There's a lot of myths out there. Warren Buffett promotes it. Bill Gates promotes it. Sir Richard Branson. We can go down the list, not
Sure.
because they own network marketing companies. A lot of them started there, not Warren Buffett, but many of these people started doing things or in the network marketing. It's like any other business. A certain percentage, or 20% of the people make 80% of the money in this world. Actually, 3% of the American people, the 3% of the population, makes 90% of the money. Okay, so but network marketing people are people succeeding in it? Yes. Are people failing it? Yes. And I'll just read this, and we'll sort of close with this. Is it possible to be successful in network marketing? The truth is, while you can get rich in MLM, I know a lot of people that are mega millionaires because of it. The statistics show that only 1% get to that level. Hey, guess what? That's the real world. It's 1% in real estate.
Right. Right.
The numbers don't change. I love what this person said. However, that's not necessarily the MLM business is at fault. Listen to this. Most athletes never make it to the Olympics. But that's not the sports Olympics fault. Think about it. So if 1% moves to that million there, and that's, even in Ron's business, there's only a small percentage that get into that stratosphere. 1% get to the high. 1% of kids in high school ever make it to the pros. Less than 1%, right? So these numbers are real. Expectation have to be set. Say, hey, maybe you don't make $1 million in a network, but you make $30,000 or $40,000 residual income. You work hard once, the money comes in every month. That's interesting. That's worth $1 million asset without having $1 million. I guarantee it. So that's how I built my wealth. I have wealth, and I have continual wealth coming to me every month. Did I have to work it? Yes, it's a business.
Right.
Like a business. It's not a hobby. I find a purpose and a passion and a cause, and that's what it takes in anything you do, even to go empire, right, Mark?
Oh, yeah. you got to invest in you, and that those are some of the things that I appreciated what Royce was talking about. Maybe you're dealing with someone that maybe they don't have the same matching shirt as you, and this is what he was talking about. Get to understand them, or maybe they're under a little financial duress, but you don't act like you're up here and they're down here, and they're subservient to you. And I just loved his message, and it's more than just umpiring. It's how to treat your fellow being, your fellow man. And what he was talking about is I don't mean to get biblical, excuse me, but I'm not gonna renounce or denounce the good book, but it comes from the Bible. I mean, pure and simple, and it came from his heart, and that's why I'm sending this out. Hopefully, it gets through here. I just clicked here for the link. Yeah, there it is. That's how you can watch this, and I'd advise anybody to take a look at it. Really, really cool guy. He has a really strong New York accent. I'm teasing, but I can just tell he's a good-hearted person. And if I had young kids playing or collegiate kids, which I one time did, I'd want him umpiring the game because I can tell he does it the right way.
Yeah. Well, Mark, there's so many avenues we could have gone off.
Sure.
But, you brought it up this morning. People are grouchy. They're miserable.
Right.
Smiles. People are under stress.
Right.
And our whole message here is elevate your profits. And that could be just how you think about things, right?
Right.
How
yeah,
you
absolutely.
deal with what's going on. But there's solution. That's why we played God Bless America. We have more opportunities. And
Yeah, if you missed it, this is the guy that played it, by the way, here. And Ron, I know I like Miles Davis, and so Robert. Yeah, that's not Miles, but you can see it's kind of cool. It was fun. We enjoyed it. Just something different.
We're blessed that we have
Right.
freedoms to make choices. We have the choice to fail, and we have a choice to win. I mean, that's free will. We have more resources. No government tells you have to go and become this in life.
Right.
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 I don't know what I do. I'm psychologically unemployable. I've been that way since 1983. But
I think for the most part, I think we all are in one way, shape, form, or another. Mentally. you know.
but there's ways to win in this economy. It doesn't have to be the big home run. I'm going to go out and make $10 million in my
Sure.
business.
Oh,
Not
absolutely.
everybody's made to be in business, but everybody has a talent, a gift that can be monetized. And if you don't have the business acumen, you can learn it.
Right.
You can learn it. I love photography, but I didn't know anything about sports photography. I went
Right.
and worked and shadowed a guy in Olympia, Washington, the best in the world.
Right.
And I learned how to shoot 1,200 kids a day in
Right.
baseball. I couldn't do it myself, but I learned how to do it. I was a
Right.
great photographer, but I didn't know how to run a photography business and all the pieces. So I worked with the guy for a month and a half.
Right.
Worked my butt off, but I came
Sure.
back home and I kicked butt because I had a mentor that taught me the business. Hey, I could shoot pictures all day long.
Right.
So if you have a talent, find somebody who's doing it. Plug into somebody. Say, I'd be glad to come and just shadow you, work for
Right.
nothing to learn what you're doing.
Right.
Right? You don't have to pay somebody $30,000 to learn something. There's people out there who'll help you.
Well, and that's a great point because of what's out there, via YouTube and different channels and platforms that it's free, man. It's actually free. It'll break down. I mean, even playing musical instruments, it blows me away how they can teach you how to do things. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know half these channels existed. But
Yeah.
and Lord knows, baseball, there is like a plethora of how to hit a baseball, throw a baseball. I mean, till your eyes can't take it anymore. I mean, they break it down, and all sorts of age groups. There are even things on how to umpire. So if somebody couldn't in the very beginning go to a camp or go get training, I'm serious. They've actually got this stuff content out there you can watch.
Yeah. And that's our whole message, that is elevate your profits. And if you don't have a plan to do that, you become a statistic, and that's a sad thing. I think any of us, when we grow up, we get out of school and all that, we plan to have to work.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Initially we do.
And Warren Buffett, he's my man. He says, invest in yourself, live below your means, save some money, get out of debt, and stay out of debt. And
Yeah,
everything else will fill the voids in. Where do I save? Where do I invest? First of all, you got to have $1 saved so you can have $1 to invest.
right,
There's ways to figure that out through what? Self-development, which you can find right on the internet. You can read a book
right,
right here.
yeah,
Here's a great
yeah,
one. In Financial Stress Now.
right,
I taught this for 20 some years, so,
right.
and it works if you work it, but you got to be dissatisfied. You
And
don't.
and that's I think that's a good point that you brought up the books and all that. And then you mentioned about find a mentor, find somebody that can help you. And for those that can't do their own business, you know, some people laugh about it, but that's why network marketing could be right up their alley because there is a system and there is a group and they're not all raving lunatics and they don't howl at the moon when it's full moon out there. I mean, there's some pretty cool people that do it. We had one of them on our program more than once, and we
Yeah,
could get into that. Uh,
yeah.
Back in the day, I guess they called it direct sales back then. But yeah,
Direct
there's
Sales Network.
right,
It just has a myth because no one's beating up real estate, but people go into real estate every day and they're out of the business 6 months. They just can't cut it. They don't have the right mindset. First of all, that's where it all
right,
starts. So it takes work, no matter what it is. The
right,
numbers are the same, no matter what the industry or business is.
right,
That's human nature. If
right,
you can understand that and your passion and purpose is strong enough, you'll get through the obstacles. You'll do what you need to do.
right.
Tom Ginn wasn't going to let certain things get in his way. So I did things and took my ego and pride out of the way. And guess what? I worked a midnight shift in a convenience store for about 2.5 years while I was building my photography
Yeah,
business. I didn't want to go into debt anymore. I didn't want to risk my life savings while I was building a business. My photography business, I'll tell you, I had 70 grand just in equipment, just get the
right.
doors open.
And
Cameras,
and
lenses, lights,
right.
you know?
And I'll bet you Ron, if you look at his inventory, what's in
Oh,
his store,
sure.
and he was on this program and he shared his story, and which led me to you asked me about some of the things I did. I'll just abbreviate it, but if ever you want to have fun with yourself, go knock on doors. I did it, and I got to tell you, it's the most humbling experience when you're selling lawn care, knocking on people's doors during their dinner time, or I think that's even worse than picking up the phone. But I can, oh my goodness, I shared with this, and it's a true story. I had the credentials, but at least 3 times police would stop me. And when I say shake down, they'd like, okay, what are you doing? Let me see your ID. Okay, great. Yeah, you're legit. You're just going to have to leave this neighborhood, because it was a nice neighborhood and they just didn't want me knocking on their doors. But I'm like, okay, I'll go somewhere else. Or better yet, I'd say, excuse me, officer, how's your yard looking today? And they said, man, you're too much. You got to leave. But hey, you got to have fun. In fact, today I got told by someone that hopped on our website that I didn't really come right out and ask for the referral. I said, do you know anybody else in your organization since you're not interested in sales training? They didn't find that too humorous. So, whatever. And
Hey,
I think that's another thing. to lighten up and have fun and enjoy the
Yes.
process. Easier said than done, but you talk about it a lot on your gratitude G-Force. It's about the mindset. And, Ron's out there doing it. He's implementing it every day. I'm sure there's sometimes he'd like to kick the dog. Please don't ever kick Ruby, sweet dog that she is, but or kick the can or whatever. But you just got to learn to roll with it. I mean, just like yesterday, you know, pathetic, blah 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 blah. There was the three P's they used, and I won't get into that. But we just kind of looked at one another and smiled and said, "Oh well, you know, we'll just grow and develop from this experience and not internalize it or personalize it because we didn't." And then they moved on, and the other two teams said, "We're so glad to see you here," and we looked at one another and started laughing, at the plate meeting. We just like, well, we're glad you are, because we're glad to be here. So
Right.
you got to have fun with it.
Yeah, life should be fun. Find those things you love, have a
Right.
passion for. Too many people, 80% of the people that have a job hate Monday mornings. They can't wait for Friday. And
Yeah, that's
find something even outside your job. You got obligation, family, kids, benefits, all the things that are hard to come by. You got to count those blessings, but go find something that warms your heart, puts a smile on your face. It could be the basket coaching some kids. It could be refereeing or working with your kids in their dance studio or something. A
right.
church organization. Get
Yeah.
filled. You don't have to. And too many people are upset and stressed out with what's going on, just the pressures that come. So, Mark, I know you got other commitments.
Yes, I do.
You want,
We're at that bewitching hour, so
yeah,
I have to shut this down, everybody, as I go to my Monday and dance class here in Peachtree Corners. So, Country Western Social Club that it is, and we're going to be learning more of the country cha-cha. So I'm sure they'll throw more things at us, and our heads will be swimming on overload.
boy,
So
we
it's a
got a
lot of
lot of
fun.
comments tonight. I
Yeah.
appreciate all the comments we got, and wow,
Yeah.
we'll get back and make comments on it after the post.
Yeah.
But we want to close with this, Mark. Is that all right?
Sure. Absolutely.
What's in this blue bottle?
Well, it's something I took this weekend, I can tell you that, and it got me through the weekend.
Yeah, and seriously, without our health, we can't accumulate wealth. And when I talk about wealth, we're not talking about what's in your bank account. We're talking about your quality of life. If you don't have health, you're in
Right.
trouble. You can lose your wealth just like that. So Mark and I, you want to learn more about what's in the bottle, our link is there. We encourage you to look at it. This is something I've got a passion for, and Mark as well. And we just want to share the good news. Take a
Right.
look at it, evaluate it yourself, and if you want conversation, you know how to get a hold of Mark and I. Fair enough?
Yeah, that's tremendous. And I just want to say thank you for Robert and Ron, and I don't know who else is out here, but there were a lot of comments thrown around. Of course, myself, I threw a few at you, but just the fact you took time to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate it much.
Totally respect everybody out there in Facebook Nation. Anybody out there that has a platform or a program. I'm sorry I can't attend all these events live. I wouldn't get anything done if I just sat there and clicked my phone all day. It can be addictive. So I try and watch things and catch it for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then I got to move on. So,
Yeah.
and we understand likewise with us.
Yeah. And Mark, I'll be lining up a guest to talk specifically what's in this blue bottle. I got some guests lined up that
Cool.
could do
Oh,
some
neat.
education about health and all that type of stuff. So we give it, let somebody that knows it better than I and you share it.
Oh,
so you're
absolutely.
ready?
Yeah, I think we're ready. We need to shut it down and again, thank everybody. And hopefully, Royce, if you're out there listening, or even Kent Walker, I would love to get both of you on here because we need to have people of your stature, your position, what you do out there, not just because you're umpires, but how what you do in that particular idiom, how it applies to everyday life. And you could share a lot of truth, wisdom, and knowledge with us. And that's what this is all about here.
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to have that opportunity. And again, with gratitude, everybody, thank you for being here. Share this out. Hopefully it'll resonate with somebody. We're here to serve and help. So with that all said, you ready, Mark?
Oh, absolutely.
We'll close out with this.